It has been more than 1 year since the first case of COVID-19 was identified in Canada. With nearly the entire world entering lockdown by March of 2020, the virus has caused substantial economic damage while increasing the wealth gap between the rich and the poor.
COVID-19 called for an immediate and drastic change to daily operations in workplaces across the country. Small businesses were forced to shut down while many of their big box chain competitors had a significant advantage because they were allowed to remain open or were already prepared for online orders in a world transitioning to e-commerce. Within the first few months of lockdown, businesses across the country reported a substantial decline in revenue, with small businesses being hit twice as hard as businesses with 500 or more employees. The loss in revenue had a domino effect that resulted in layoffs, thus increasing unemployment. Nationally, nearly 41% of businesses reported that they laid off staff. Of those businesses that laid off at least one employee, 45% laid off 80% or more of their workforce. With the unemployment rates increasing, it became difficult to make ends meet and left many at risk of eviction, a countrywide call for help that demanded government intervention.
In mid-March, the Canadian government started its Canada Emergency Response Benefit that provided financial support to employed and self-employed Canadians who were directly affected by COVID-19. Although the CERB program was intended to help people who were struggling to meet financial obligations, many have cheated the system due to the lack of regulations and minimal consequences for fraud. According to the CRA's records, over 800,000 people who didn't file a tax return in the past year received $2,000 worth of monthly CERB checks at a cost to taxpayers of nearly $1.7 billion. On the other hand, according to CBC, more than 14,000 people in the top income tax bracket, earning $210,371 or more dollars in 2019, filed for CERB, saying they were without income. Though these stimulus payments were distributed with good intentions, the system was grossly misused and will have an impact on the Canadian economy long after the pandemic is over.
Unemployment rates have skyrocketed since the beginning of COVID-19, and as a result, low-income households are struggling to make ends meet. Previous to the implementation of the no eviction rule in Ontario, many low-income families were forced to move out and search for a new home due to their inability to pay rent. This also affected landlords, causing a cycle of financial hardship and strain. The impact of unemployment and lack of regulations that protected renters from being evicted, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, caused an increase in the number of people relying on homeless shelters. Due to social distancing guidelines, shelters were forced to cut back on bedding and were forced to deny many people in need despite the increasing demand for temporary housing. Those who were eligible for CERB and applied in good faith were still living paycheck to paycheck, using the payments to meet basic needs. The wealthy, however, alongside individuals who received government monetary support, were able to invest their funds when the stock market crashed, leading to huge returns on recovery, especially in sectors such as technology.
Fintechs like Robinhood massively increased their user base in the first 4 months of 2020, with over 3 million new users on Robinhood alone. Other brokers, even Canadian ones such as Questrade and Wealthsimple, reported a massive influx as well. TD Ameritrade reported that millennials now account roughly for 30% of its retail clients, an increase of 35% over 3 years. After hitting all-time highs on February 19, the market dropped 34% in just 33 days. However, once the Federal Reserve of the United States indicated that it would do whatever it takes to keep the economy afloat, the market quickly reorientated and has risen roughly 72% since the end of March. It is clear that for many individuals who were not bottlenecked by financial needs, were able to capitalize on massive stock market growth in just the past year, further increasing the income gap.
Solutions such as CERB are temporary fixes to a problem that will require structural economic reform long after the end of the pandemic. However, these temporary measures are necessary to support citizens in need. The government could implement the needed infrastructure and guidelines for small businesses to be able to operate safely in a pandemic environment. Allowing establishments in areas that have lower numbers of COVID-19 cases to operate could also help generate more income on a smaller scale. Finally, to help the homeless, the government could follow the previously executed tactic in New York of opening hotels and transforming them into temporary shelters for those in need. Though these are costly solutions that are not long-term fixes to the economic damage of COVID-19, they help combat the aftershocks of COVID that are currently impacting our nation.